I've been very fortunate to have incredible mentors and champions in my life, starting with my father and my mother. I always have to try to give her credit too. There's a lot of invisible labor by women over the years, so I don't want to participate in that. But anyway, my dad, he knew everybody in jazz, so he took me around to clubs and had me meet everybody and had me sit in, would tell them that I could play and they would ask me to sit in. So he was my biggest champion and still is. And then I think I was around 10, and I know Dianne and I share a mentor in Terri because that's when we met. I was 10 and we were at the Wichita Jazz Festival. And Clark brought both of us as a guest. And then I went on to play with him in his band when I was 18. So he was a big mentor as well. Jack DeJohnette is my, probably my biggest mentor as a drummer and just, surrogate family. And also Wayne Shorter. When I was 21, I started playing with Wayne, and he became a huge mentor, a life mentor and musical mentor as well. And unfortunately, there weren't so many women, mentors in the music, but outside of the music, there were, for me, Bernice Johnson Regan, and also, I would say, Angela Davis.
Yeah, the same thing for me. First, it started in family. My mother people always say, your mother played trumpet, but she played trumpet in high school. It wasn't a thing that she was pursuing, but she understood that there was something about me that was really, really attracted to music. And she afforded me all kinds of opportunities to be able to build in that. So very early on, it was my mother, it was my local teachers that were here. And like Terri said, we met at the Wichita Jazz Festival. Through Clark Terry, who was probably one of the greatest influences for me because he, trusted me enough, and Terri as well, for us as young as we were, to actually play with him in his band. So it was, we were learning right, on stage. I always call those the living schools. And then later on, I had wonderful mentor in William Fowler when I went to the University of Colorado. He was really great. And when I left school and went to Los Angeles, of course, my cousin George Duke, and interestingly enough, early on, people like Clark were still in my life, but Louis Belson was very much a part of my life because I was living there and always giving me opportunity. And as well as like people like Vi Red, I would go to Parisian rooms. She would always open things up to me and, talk to me about the music. And my experiences really, really came from people trusting me to record on their projects, when I really didn't even have any idea of really what I was doing, but they felt that there was something in me that could do it. And so I would have to say that my experience of working live and recording very, very early on made a big difference in my life. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Even through teaching, like most of my work is in master classes and, being available to a whole group of, especially in the singing community, singers who call on me all the time. And I'm able to be there for them like others were for me.
Yeah, I think it's really important to pass on the things that we know, not just the musical things, but all of those things that these great artists shared with us, especially the spirit of mentoring. So when we teach, we're mentoring, basically. I think that everybody's a teacher. That's the first thing. You don't even have to be at a school or university to be a teacher because that's how this music operates. It's a lineage and it's a continuum, and we have to constantly teach one another as well as the next generations. So there's always mentoring involved. And so right now, I feel like because it's an apprentice art form, I feel like we have to do more with mentoring and apprenticing young women because they do not get the same mentoring opportunities. And often it's been because, I mean, the age-old thing about women not traveling. I mean, even back to when slavery ended, women weren't able to travel. You know, it was not appropriate. And so men immediately got to leave home, travel with their guitar or their voice, or play the piano, and
their dreams.
Yeah, their dreams.
Yeah. To be able to see those, people who were the trailblazers that were able to, especially during my time of, growing and learning, that were out there that made space for me, made time for me. I would go and see someone like the great Betty Carter, and I would go see her so much. She would say, "That girl is out there," and so she made space for me. And after the show, I would always have the opportunity to go back and talk to her, and or actually to listen to her speak and tell me things that really enhanced my life. Well, the biggest thing is, the whole thing with singing, people thought that, that's what a woman should do, is to sing. But the thing is, I've never viewed myself as just a singer, but I'm a musician and part of a band that is mine, actually, that I conduct and that I'm very much a part of. And so I never wanted to, and there's nothing wrong with it, but for me, with the people that, I was modeling myself after, they were always people who stood in the band and, were a great part of the energy and the ideas that were flowing from the stage. I'll never forget that one time I had a band with Billy Childs, and this really, really famous disc jockey was at a concert that we were doing, and he said, "Oh, this band is really, really cool." And he's like, "So who's the chick singer?" And Billy said, "Dianne Reeves," and the conversation kept going on. And then the guy says, well, whose band is this? And Billy looked at him and said, "The chick singer." So that was like advocacy for me, that was an ally for me. But at the same time, realizing how people view you, where male musicians, they get to be everything. And we are like relegated to one thing or a trick. And so, it's pushing through all of that and showing that you are formidable person, musician with abilities to, create and change and innovate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of what Dianne said, I think that there's this unwritten narrative or unspoken, I don't know, maybe it is spoken narrative that the men play the music and the women sing it. Mm-hmm. And that's basically how it's been. So any women that played were viewed as exceptions if they were good. Mm-hmm. If they weren't good, they didn't have access. And they had to stick together. So there's a lot of layers to this problem. And mm-hmm. one for me is, if you don't give somebody opportunity and they don't develop through playing with people that are better than them, which was happening, and still happening with a lot of women, then they go play with each other. So they create mm-hmm. their own opportunities. And also it forces some women to be leaders before they may be ready. Mm-hmm. And there's just, you can't beat the school of the living school, as Dianne said. So I think that's one big issue. For me personally, I didn't realize that I was not contributing to the solution by somewhat being okay with being an exception. And mm-hmm. so I think we've learned that exceptionalism is not good mm-hmm. because a few people rise to the top and they become examples, and mm-hmm. then there's everybody else. So now that I'm more aware and have the energy to really deal with these issues head on, I'm speaking about it. And I mean, it's not like I'm turning down gigs that I want to do, but at least I can point this problem out and try to get, more male musicians to understand it as well, because they have to be part of the solution, or this thing won't really change. Yeah, it's something we aspire to. I don't feel it's just a provocative question. I think the real question is, what would society be like without patriarchy? How would
Mhm.
humanity be without patriarchy? But in jazz
Mhm.
specifically, I think that the male aesthetic has just dominated the music for so long that we all look to that as being the definitive quintessential sound of the music. And I think that it's time now that people start asking if uh, the aesthetic of women were more in the music, what would it sound like? How would it be different? Because right now, the biggest compliment I could get my whole career would be that I play as good
Right,
as the
like a
next
man.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, even though
yeah,
we'd be offended if somebody says that, but
yeah.
in my heart, I'm still trying to play as good as the next guy all the time.
Hmm.
I'm still,
But
I'm
still
still,
less because, still your gender was a part of it, still like, well, she could really do it, but she's just as good as that. But that would be about as far as it could go until you would have people, who would, stand by what they were saying and allow you to be a part of what they're doing. For me, it was like looking for women. I mean, I really looked for women because I guess it was something that I really needed. And I'll never, going back to Betty Carter, I always bring her up because that was the first time I'd ever really seen somebody stand in a band, conduct and perform in a way that I knew that everything that was coming off that stage was being generated by her power, her voice, and her concept. And I had never seen that before. And so that was the thing. And then, after that, going and looking for that in the singers that really, or the instrumentalists that really spoke to me. And I was always looking for women in that way.
for me, it's something that I didn't want to do for a long time because I didn't want to be
Mhm.
pigeonholed. Or as far as my career, most of the people that hired me, were men of an older generation because peers didn't hire me quite as much. But at the time that I had a gig in Eilat, Israel, the Red Sea Jazz Festival, and I hired Jerry Allen, Esperanza Spalding, and Tinika Postma. And when I did that for the first time, not realizing that I had called three women, that's when I said, oh, okay, there's a shift here. I'm playing with all these amazing women, so why not celebrate it on a project? I wasn't really trying to make much more of a statement other than that. And it didn't feel any different because I was still expecting all of us to play as good as the next guy,
Mhm.
like that was still the level. And then it was, there are a lot of people may have written about that album saying, if you close your eyes, you don't know that that's all women. And so it's
Yes. Yeah.
interesting, right?
There,
Because it's the
yeah.
same thing,
Thing, yeah. I
but
mean,
what,
because that the whole gender thing gets caught up in there, and music doesn't care, music doesn't care about gender, just play it well, And even in the experience of working, with Terri through the Mosaic Project, and we were in Europe, and I mean, it was a band of really great musicians, and we had a ball, couldn't wait to hit the stage to see, like any other night, what was going to happen, but constantly by the press being asked about our gender, and it's like, well, what did you think about the music? I mean, we were killing it up there. Come on now, let's get past that.
and one other thing with the Mosaic Project is even when we toured, there were at least one or two men that played on
Mm-hmm.
stage with us because I was always in the mindset that this is something that we have to do together.
Yeah.
Gender equity does not necessarily mean all women. And I think that's why I look at that project as being something that celebrates women, because there were all women on the recording, but live in making a gender equity statement, I think it's important for men to work with women, with a women dominated band, and also with a woman leader, instrumentalist. And our institute does the same thing. We have men, women, everybody on the entire gender spectrum, because I think that's really the larger issue. And I do feel like there should be some spaces that are just for women, but my philosophy has always been we have to get in here and work together on this. And when we can push out young men that have come through our institute that are thinking along those lines, I think that's very helpful. I mean, there's probably a lot of unsung women and non-binary or trans artists that we don't know about. I think that there's one person that just came to mind, and I'm not sure how he played, but Billy Tipton. And that came to mind because just of the story of somebody that really wanted to play the music and, became a trans man, and actually died because he didn't get the medical care that he needed because he was afraid for people to know that he was trans.
Yeah.
And this is, such the same old story. I mean, it's not much different than what happened to Bessie Smith, right? I mean, these are things that should not be killing people. So I found that story to be interesting because I also have a few trans students in the Institute, but I also have some women that tell a similar story. And that story is basically adjusting who you are so that you can fit into, the social part of this. And so I know women that felt like they had to be tougher when they go on the road so that they don't get hit on. It was really fascinating because one former student, told me that then she started becoming that person that she was pretending to be just to not get hit on. It's really, fascinating, all the extra work, extra labor, extra burdens, yes, that women have that men don't even have to think about. So we really have to address that.
A lot, yeah.
Well, first of all, I have to give Pixar a lot of credit because with all of their films, they really do a deep dive into the culture and they really try to get it right. And we just watched the film from when it was in sketch form all the way through till it was fully animated, and just made some suggestions here and there. But I do think you're right. It's very important that they saw women leading bands as instrumentalists and learning how to play. And it was great to see Joe, the lead character, teaching Connie, the trombone player, and not treating her any different. He was, if he rolled his eyes about her, it wasn't any different than he rolled his eyes about because he was just kind of a disgruntled teacher right at that point. But you could see that he loved her, and you could also see that he felt like she could really play.
That she had potential.
And then to have Tia and Linda Mahan O playing the instruments and also having women depicted as the players was great. And
imparting wisdom, as well, handing it down. That spirit was there. That I loved.
Yeah. I mean, it was done well. And I do feel that men have to take direction from women, not just women singers. Men have to take direction from women instrumentalists. And I don't think there's quite enough that have had that experience.
And there like powerful women who did that, and they were known within the jazz community, but not celebrated. Most of all, thinking of Mary Lou Williams, who was just that, showing people how, and other ways to hear, so, and then having to also struggle to even have a voice. I mean, my biggest thing is, I have to go back to, deal with the content of the artistic ability first, be able to be open to people because you like what it is that they're bringing to the table. And at the same time, those that you are seeing that don't have space in the room, afford them even more space in the room. If you see, like Clark did for us, if you see something within them, that you feel will add to all of this, help them to have space in the room to express themselves and to have the experience of working with you, as a master musician, to bring up their thing, as well. I've always selected musicians based on how I like the way they play. And so I never, I hope that I will always be like that and not think of it in terms of, oh, she's a woman or she's or this or that or whatever, a vegetarian, doesn't matter. Can you play and let's make some music.
Yeah, I would add to that I do feel that people have to be somewhat proactive with hiring more women, mentoring more women, apprenticing more women, because I don't think this is going to change without that. And I do feel that women sometimes are expected to come fully formed, and it's a lot more difficult to be fully formed if you haven't had the same access in the past. So like jam sessions, that's a real big way, right, that people learn how to play. And it's often women may go and just don't get asked or get, they don't let them up there, or it's just, or they're ridiculed and they don't feel, so without access, we can't just come fully formed. So I do feel like you have to look more at the potential and really help to, get some of these young, talented women with potential to the next level.
None of this existed. None of this existed when I was coming through. None of this. And to see, for me, seeing these opportunities and this consciousness and all of these things evolving, I wonder, gosh, what would I have done in this space? Because this is something that I see that is a major change. I mean, like major from where I came from. And had it not been for like someone like Clark Terri, who, was also somebody who just saw talent and was about, feeding it, I don't know, that gave me courage. And so now we have all of these other ways to give people courage, and it's wonderful. I think it's great. And I keep learning, from Terri, she was like my little sister now in certain ways with what she is doing. I think the roles have switched, and I'm always like going, okay, what does she say about this? And let me go back and look at this. And yes, absolutely. So I love what's happening now.
Well, you'll always be my big sister. So.
Woo!